Hello, everyone. This is Gary Gomes. I'm here to talk with you about Vedic astrology, what it means to you, what it means to the world at large, and how it will affect world events over the next week. I'll also go over signs based upon rising sun or moon sign, and I'll look at a world map to see where I think most of the action will be. So, by the way, if you'd like to talk with me about getting a reading or getting lessons, please either uh, text me or call me at 508-525-0001. Again, that's 508-525-0001. I can also be emailed at Gary Gomes G at gmail.com. That's all. That's my name run together, with the letter G added at gmail.com. Okay? So, it's been kind of an interesting week, and we can see certain patterns of, it's been a relatively violent week with a lot of undertones. So I'm just going to talk about the week. I'm only going to touch on the eclipse because I don't want to spend too much of your time on that. But let's talk about the week and especially the violence we saw earlier this week. Um, Gonna stop the share. The share didn't go through. I'm going to try to make this a lot tauter and a lot more condensed and less wandering. So just in general observations, the moon is in Scorpio right now as we start the week. This is kind of I'm just trying to put the best flavor I can on it. It's kind of a depressing and angry placement. The Lord of Scorpio is Mars, aspected by Saturn, so you will find a lot of a lot of people essentially angry at the world, although Jupiter is aspecting the first house in this chart, which is favorable for the overall week. We have seen, so let me go back to the violence I indicated earlier this week. A great deal of that happened between. So we had the incident in Cincinnati, and earlier in the week we had the incident in New York. Um, so, uh, and also, I've heard about several incidents around the world. I can't remember the specifics, but it's been kind of a horrible week for violence. And one of the reasons for that is essentially the moon was in conjunction with K2 that can give a deranged or what I would call crazy behavior. And that happened roughly between Monday and Tuesday, Monday, Tuesday through Wednesday, and then uh, roughly the balance of the week up until around Thursday, we had a Mars conjunction with the moon, aspected by Saturn. So we had the racial incident, which is not, again, we're not hearing the whole story about it, but it was about an act. It was, um, I'm not going to say, it was disturbing. Let's put it that way. And so was the incident in New York City, it was it seemed so deliberate. Um, the incident in New York City seemed deliberate. The incident in Cincinnati seemed to have been um, trying to think of the best way to say this without um, aggravating either side. Um, just bad. It was just a bad, just a bad situation all the way around. Um, the so this the Saturn Mars aspect was in full play there, and also there are certain uh, foreign policy decisions that so we can look at certain things in, let's say, the president's chart that also interacted with that, and that was the earlier in, in the week the reaction to some of the trade deals not going down the way he wanted them to, and also um, the action of sending submarines to Russia. So some people might like that idea, so other people might not like that idea. Uh, I don't think it's such a good idea, but that's me. That's just individually me. And we'll see and we'll see if the sanctions have any effect because Russia can still trade with China, India. You know, it's got a big market out there. But there were some interesting things. But again, we have a retrograde Mercury, which essentially means that communications are going to be misunderstood. And also, we have a retrograde Saturn, which means we're going to resort to previous patterns we had from the past. So I think this kind of action is not really surprising when you consider these two retrogrades. I'm just going to jump ahead briefly to the if you do things during a retrograde Saturn, um, don't expect things to correct themselves right away. That's just been my experience, you know. So the action won't be understood, or it will be ignored, or it will be delayed until Saturn goes direct. So that's sort of just a general recipe for everybody. I'm not going to go to Trump's chart. I'm going to go to the eclipse chart first previously. You know, you can pull it up properly. Sorry about that, folks. So, you know, September. No, I'm misspelling. Sorry about that, folks. Okay, I'm going to go to the eclipse. Why? I'm not sure why isn't showing up. Yeah, that's it. Misspelled. Okay, we'll fix that now. Just arbitrarily chose Greenwich, England. All right, so we have so we have Venus K2 eclipse. Let's see, quickly how that interacts with Donald Trump's chart. Just very quickly. Okay, so the rising sign of the eclipse is in Aries, which is Trump's ninth house. There's a Venus K2 conjunction um, in Trump's first house. It's not, it, Venus is close to his rising sign. It's within 2 degrees of his rising sign, but that doesn't, K2 itself, which is the eclipse causing planet, is very far away from his rising sign. So that, to me, so there could be some intimation of a sex scandal or something like that. But I think a lot of astrologers are stretching that a little bit too much, in my personal opinion. Um, the this in Trump's chart has to do with things like women. He has several affairs with women, um, and but it's really not. This K2 conjunction will come later on that month, so I would expect anything unseen or anything that we hadn't seen come up I'm sorry, not later that month in October, something unseen, something would come up in October, but I'm not getting sex scandal or cover up or anything like that. That's not what I'm getting. Um, at least from this chart. Um, this rules Trump's third house, um, and his 10th house of career. So that could pose some threats to his life during this particular time span, um, or some illnesses. It could also indicate some elements connected with other conspiracies that have taken place against him. Venus is an interesting planet because it not only exposes bad acts that you've done, it also exposes bad acts other people have done to you. So I'm wondering if that might also be a point at which um, Department of Justice takes some action against um, people who have conspired against him in the past. So we have two possible interpretations of that particular eclipse causing some problems for him. Uh, if we're looking at this, so let's get back to the actual chart itself. Um, so he's reinstituted sanctions against Russia. You all heard my opinion uh, about who will um, ultimately gain what they want from the Russia-Ukraine conflict. I haven't changed my opinion about that. I'm not so sure the sanctions will make any difference. Uh, but it is what I think he's trying to. push the Soviets, or not the Soviets, the Russians, they're not Soviets anymore, push the Russians more towards a peace accord. And unfortunately, he's making the same mistake the Biden administration made. So I just, and that may also be to ameliorate, um, just to like force things quickly. The I read something interesting in that is there is a velocity indicator on planets, and so see if I can pull that chart for you. Um, when planets are moving fast, they're not considered to be really powerful. And there's a couple of choices here. I'm gonna This isn't the one I wanted. Give me a second. You give me some monetary gains. Sorry about that, folks. This isn't what I'm looking for. There's an astronomical table. Hold on a second. Astronomy table. That's what I'm looking for. Astronomical data table. All right. So if you look at fast-moving planets now the sun, the moon, Mars are normally fast-moving planets. Um, Jupiter, this is fast for Jupiter. Jupiter's speed is essentially 171% of where it should be. Mars is 128% of where it should be. And um, Mercury is 175, but it's retrograde, so it's inherently strong. Um, Jupiter and Venus, the two planets connected with judgment or wisdom, aren't particularly strong right now. Excuse me. Sorry for the pause. And this is something that probably I should pay attention to more because I, to be honest with you, I felt kind of rushed over the past couple of months, and I think a lot of people have. And is that planetary speed, which weakens, it increases impulsiveness. So essentially, it can give a sense of optimism, which is out of proportion with reality, and especially when benefics are gathered in kind of an impulsive sign. So this is a strong desire to get things over and done with. So keep that in mind as you're looking over, as you're planning things out over the next few months, because these negative indicators, Mars is a positive indicator, but these are very high. Mars is 128. That's reasonably good speed. Saturn is extraordinarily fast right now. So again, there's a little bit of a worry about impulsiveness or rashness of judgment. And that's why I've been very careful jumping to conclusions about things like assassinations or collapse of administrations or even taking actions against other parties because of that um, I call it irrational optimism. There's sometimes that we feel in these charts. And I'm not saying you shouldn't do something if it feels good. I'm saying it's a time to be just a little bit cautious, just a little bit um, measured, if you can be. Um, so let's say you have to make a decision like buying property or something like that. Look over the property a couple of times, just make sure, especially with Mercury retrograde. But Venus and Jupiter together tend to be an incredibly optimistic combination by themselves. Okay, they're lucky, inherently lucky. So that's good. So anytime that you have this kind of a combination, it is a good time to take risks. But it's also a time where you can make mistakes, where you can make errors, where you can be overly optimistic or overly um, exuberant as opposed to being careful and cautious. So we want a nice balance in life. We want to be able to make sure our decisions are good. Okay? So that's the caution I'm giving everybody this week. Uh, Number one, don't jump to conclusions. Number two, especially with Mercury retrograde, but don't assume either positively or negatively that things will work out in exactly the way that you either want them to or don't want them to. Okay, and so that's the best advice I can give you at this particular point in time. It is a good moon, despite the fact that it's in Scorpio. Scorpio's in Anurata moons, so you get help from other people. It's out of its deepest debilitation, which was the Shaka Nakshatra, which is over here at the very beginning of Scorpio. And Anurata is actually considered to be, you get help, you get blessings of money when the moon is going through that particular nakshatra. So this is actually not a bad week to make money, to seek financial success, to seek um, growth. So this, so none of those things are bad, but just be a little bit cautious about taking on more than you can absorb. The other thing is from this chart, in terms of you will see a lot of new technological developments actually within the next month or so. Prior to the eclipse, Saturn is in the sixth house. Some obstacles in terms of health or in terms of recovery. Um, for those of you who are sick, and but Jupiter and Venus overall, that's a lucky placement. Both are near the middles of the sign. That's considered to be extremely optimistic placement. Mercury is even close to the middle of the sign, so even though it's retrograde, it's relatively favorable. Mars is a little bit weak, so Mars is a little bit, trying to think of the right word to use, it's a little bit less logical than it could be. Okay. K2 Um, you will see some depositions of some leaders. And when I say deposition, I mean leaders deposed rather than deposition. Although you may see the depositions coming down too. Um, and I think that's especially true um, in the United States chart. Uh, but we'll see how that all works out. The other thing we have, and somebody asked me because I said I thought Trump's adversaries would be submerged this week. They thought I, I meant they would be taken out or or denied their rights or something like that. Not really. I, I, I think overall, what we're seeing right now is there's a flood of publicity that's both extremely negative for Trump and extremely positive for Trump. So we're not going to see a nice balanced month this month. Also, one thing you have to keep in mind, we're in August, the Sun and K2 will be in conjunction within about 4 weeks, roughly, and that will cause some disruptions to governmental leaders. This could indicate assassination attempts. This could indicate leaders being both present and former leaders or any kinds of leaders being called to court or embarrassed or humiliated. It wouldn't necessarily be specific to the United States. It would be essentially a global problem, and you may see um, a lot more civil unrest in August in general, and you'll probably see that building up over the next few weeks. So that's something to keep in mind. So that having been said, optimism in the stock market, good. Optimism in things like Bitcoin, good. Just know, just as you, as Jupiter hits its retrogression around November, you'll start to see it slowing down a lot. That will essentially, um, it won't cause a recession, but it will tampen down the over optimism um, or the feeling that everything's gonna work out fine. And Jupiter will have us renegotiating things with various, I would say, around the world, not necessarily just the United States, but around the world. Okay, so renegotiating, and that will bring a certain amount of what I would call uh, fear or uh, animosity between countries. So I would view November as being a very difficult time. Over the next few months, as a matter of fact, between now and November, probably a very difficult time for most governments. Not necessarily in terms of economic prosperity, but in terms of civil unrest. So people just getting tired of um, things going the wrong way. The So let's look at the individual signs. I want to go ahead to the individual signs now. So again, this isn't a bad chart. Don't get me wrong. I'm just cautioning you not to be too optimistic. It's just it's it this is a nice combination. Venus and Jupiter together can inculcate a certain amount of recklessness. They can make us do things because we think nothing can harm us. We're lucky, lucky, lucky. Okay, so just be aware of that. I've been through this a few times myself. I speak from experience. All right, so we have this chart for Aries. Let's say for Aries. So trade will be good. Most diplomatic relations will be good. But again, like I said, just be be aware that domestic relations, especially relationships with leaders, will not be good. All right. So let's go over to the individual signs. Aries has um, its Lord Mars is in the sixth house. This will make this sign very combative, very difficult to deal with. Um, it will feel very lucky, very optimistic. Nothing wrong with that, but it'll have a lot of focus on its home and a lot of focus on health and desires. So there's a little bit of a problem in terms of, and Jupiter and Venus are the ruler of the seventh house, so relationship partners will be very optimistic this month. Although surface-wise, they'll be a little bit pessimistic or down. Saturn is in the 12th house. Saturn does give, again, heavy expenditure loads, but they will be lightened over the next few months. Rahu is in the 11th house. Aries should watch out for its friends being shallow or difficult to deal with. Taurus, so this would be April 15th to May 15th. Taurus has um, Venus is Lord of the first house. So again, that optimism is very strong. It's actually good for this sign. It will bring more money into the sign. It will bring a lot of courage into the sign. And Mars in the fifth house, some problems with children, some problems with home life, but and relationship life will probably be a little bit depressed or a little bit anxious. Rahu's in the 10th house, some difficulty with career life. So at least from the chart, um, yeah, not really bad, but again, be careful who your friends are at work. And I'm saying that for Aries and for Taurus. And also, just watch out that your friends aren't jealous of you, according to this sign placement. For Gemini, Gemini has Jupiter and Venus in the first house. Um, this is interesting because I do know some Geminis and they're worried about family, especially because we have Mars in the fourth house. They're worried about relationships because relationship partners are being a little bit funny or a little bit weird. They're worried about career. But overall, Jupiter and Venus in the first house is generally auspicious. It's a Dana Yoga or a wealth-producing combination for this sign. Now, that can be interfered with by negative transits. So we have Mercury retrograde, which will delay money coming into you. And we also have Mars in the fourth house, which means a lot of focus will be on domestic matters. Children will seem to be a bit rebellious or difficult to deal with. And in the sixth house, there'll be some issues concerning peace of mind because Moon is in the sixth house and it's a difficult planetary placement. So there are issues with health, but Jupiter's aspecting the seventh house, so relationship life should improve. Rahu's in the ninth, so there's a fear that any luck that you have will be taken away from you or will be subverted. So that's one thing that's a little bit difficult. And Saturn in the 10th house, a lot of work, but not a lot of financial progress, unfortunately. So even though this is a lucky sign placement, it's a Dana Yoga, there are countervailing trends in the chart which indicate that even though you're lucky right now, money won't come as quickly as you'd like, but it will come. So this is June 15th to July 15th. For Cancer, Cancer has, let me move my face a little bit closer to the center. Cancer has um, Sun and Mercury in the first house. So again, that's a combination of bringing in wealth, K2 obstructing it, and Mercury spending wealth on desires and ambitions. Okay. Now, the good thing about this combination is we have Jupiter and Venus in the 12th house, which is good for saving money. As a matter of fact, it might be too easy to save money. You might be inclined to blow it because these are impulsive houses, but usually the person will save money in spite of him or herself. Mars in the third, a lot of courage for the sign this month. Moon, like I said, Moon is in some ways the most important planet in the chart in terms of our mental disposition. Moon is in the fifth house, so there is some worry or concern about children, although the children do seem to be improving a little bit, but there's not a real sense of self-control among the children. Although they will get help from friends, Rahu's in the eighth house in this chart, and that gives some people conspiring behind your back and making you feel a little bit um, forlorn or depressed. Saturn in the ninth, again, not exactly the luckiest placement for success, but if you work hard and you repeat your tasks, you'll do well. And finally, we go back to that Sri Lagna is in the 11th house. Financially should be better for this sign, but again, slowly, very slowly. For so this is July 15th to August 15th, if you're born during that time span. August 15th through September 15th, we have K2 in the first house in Leo. Again, this is kind of a Raj Yoga, and I will still say that K2 is in its birthplace. Is the Lord of the fourth house in the first. So that again, even though Mars isn't with it, making it as powerful as it was, it's still a Raj Yoga. And essentially, Mars in the second house, better for money, better for aggressive action for this sign. But again, some worry or some anxiety on the home front. Rahu's in the seventh house. Rahu's in its own sign, so this isn't necessarily bad, but it will make relationship partners difficult to please. Saturn is in the eighth house. With Saturn in the eighth, again, this sign will have to look out for people who are depressed or who are um, down and um, not willing to move forward, opposing the sign or conspiring against this sign. Jupiter's in the 11th house, which is very good. It can give some very good short-term gains. And finally, Sun and Mercury are in the 10th house, the 12th house, excuse me. So it can give some difficulties with people from different countries or with friends. And this sign really shouldn't trust its friends. But again, that's for the sign to learn again. And just because it's the king doesn't mean it can't be subverted or fooled. Okay. So I think that's one of the difficulties with Leo as a planet and as a sign. It's not necessarily a stupid sign. It's definitely not a stupid sign. It's a very powerful sign. But K2 in the first house can make it a little bit careless. But again, this is K2's one of K2's preferred signs. And I think, just like Rahu is one of the, just like Cancer is one of Rahu's preferred signs. So this is from a little book called Lagu Parashri Sadat. So uh, this is, where I'm getting this stuff from. So let's look at Virgo. This Virgo is September 15th to October 15th. Mars is in the first house. It will make this sign more energized. Again, this sign has to be careful with money, has to be careful with bills when they become due. There can be misestimates of payments that have to be made. Jupiter's in and Venus are in the 10th house. Sun and Mercury are in the 11th house. Good for financial gains overall, though, and pretty good for luck for this sign. Moon is in the 3rd house. There's not a real strong desire to do much, though, and that can create a problem for this particular sign. Saturn's in the 7th. Relationship partners seem to be a little bit down in the dumps, or a little bit depressed, or a little bit weak or sick. Um, but overall, career life looks good. Saturn in the 6th, in the 7th house, does mean devotion to relationship partners, but again, there are certain bad traits that are coming back, especially in terms of perfectionism, which will um, become more intense over the next week or so. So if you have Mars aspecting Saturn, relationship partners and you yourself will want things to be absolutely perfect. So that's a little bit of a hang up to getting things done. It's a little bit of an impediment to completing things. Libra has Venus and Jupiter in the 9th house. Jupiter is not a good planet for Libra, but it does encourage it to learn. Jupiter's major indicator of learning, and Venus is also a major indicator of learning. So there's a love of learning with this potential. Mars is Lord of the 2nd house in the 12th. Again, a little bit too much heavy over expenditure. Um, that especially connected with the home. Moon is in the 2nd house. For this particular combination, um, there's a little bit of pessimism about uh, health, about life in general, about prospects in general. And you'll feel like you have a lot of enemies or it's difficult to motivate yourself. Mars will fix that a little bit, especially in a couple of months when it moves into the 1st house. But this is still kind of a low motivation time for this sign. Um, Rahu's in the 5th house, very good for discovering things, very good for new discoveries. And the 7th house Lord is in the 12th house, so relationship partners will seem to be moody or distant or maybe even isolated. Sri Lagna's in the 9th house, is in the 8th house, so unexpected gains will come this month. For Scorpio, so career life is good, luck is good, learning is good, but relationship life is not so good for Libra. That's October 15th. November 15th, or anybody with moon or rising sign of Libra. Scorpio has moon in the 1st house. It's a little bit detrimental to luck because moon is debilitated in the sign, but the sun is still going to give the sign good luck in terms of career, although there's going to be a lack of recognition in career for this particular sign. And also with Rahu in the 4th, there'll be a lot of dissatisfaction on the home front. Saturn is in the 5th house. That does indicate some problems with kids or some problems with children. And Jupiter and Venus in the 8th house, unexpected financial boons can come this week. Sun and Mercury are in the 10th house, as we said before, good for career. Mars, Ketu's in the 10th, not a lot of career recognition, though. Mars is in the 11th house. Friends will be hostile or difficult to deal with, but it's good for financial gain. For Sagittarius, Sagittarius has Jupiter and Venus in the seventh house. Good for meeting new people, good for new relationships. You may expect too much out of these relationships, so to be honest. And Rahu in the third house is good for financial gain, good for progress. Saturn's in the fourth house. This is a good placement in the chart because it will force the sign to focus on home matters and domestic matters. It can cause some blow-ups or some unhappiness at home, if I'm honest. But it'll kind of clear the air. Jupiter and Venus are in the seventh house. Um, I think for this particular combination, again, we've said this before, good for career growth actually because the seventh house is connected with career and partnerships. But the confidence in this sign will be a little bit lacking, and there will be threats or attacks um, against leaders or bosses. But Mars in the 10th house, aggressive action is indicated by this particular planet, by this for this particular sign, but not all that wisely thought out. This is the United States chart, by the way. It's Sagittarius rising. Good for financial growth, though. The one thing I will say is good for financial growth. Capricorn has Saturn in the third house. So there's a strong desire for financial growth and increase. Rahu's in the second house, look a little bit greedy, and Jupiter and the Sri Line is in the fifth house, so it should give financial gain. Jupiter and Venus in the sixth, so tends to make the sign a little bit um trying to think of the right term. It can view things as being a little bit too easy. Sun and Mercury are in the seventh are in the eighth house. There'll be a lot of focus on media this month, this week in particular, but over the next few weeks, and definitely you'll see a lot of changes in direction in media. You can see those coming. You could see those coming several months ago, but Mercury retrograde, media companies will try to reposition themselves over the next few weeks, at least up until August 11th or so. And then you'll get then you'll get full reconfigurations of media and realignments. But for this particular sign, communications will be a little bit scrambled. There'll be a lot of negotiations behind the scenes. Um, and finally, Mars is in the ninth house. It's a good planet for Capricorn rising. It's exalted in Capricorn, and it should give some good financial gains to this sign through real estate or through uh, hard assets. So not necessarily investments, but assets where you work with your hands or where you work with heavy materials. For Aquarius, Rahu is in the first house. It's interesting when Rahu is in Aquarius, everybody's worried about the future, but everybody's planning for the future. So Rahu is in this particular sign. It's going to give a lot of technological breakthroughs over the next year and a half. But also it's going to give a lot of anxiety about the future. So we do have a lot of people who are anxious about AI and things like that. And K2 will give people anxiety about who the leader is. This sign will give anxiety about who who will lead things, will the person be capable. Saturn is in the second house, and that's a little bit difficult for money, but it can eliminate debts. It can actually slow down debt collection. For This sign, Jupiter and Venus, are in the fifth house. Very good for relationships with children. Very good for creativity. Sun and Mercury are in the sixth house. That's generally a good placement for courage, but it will give you some opposition from the government or from higher ups, and what you want to do will be misunderstood. Mars is in the eighth house, not a good time for relationships for this sign. You'll attract people who are difficult to deal with or people who want to take advantage of you. For the moon in this sign, career life will seem to be a little bit um, dampened. There'll be some fall from grace in career, but it won't last all that long. Finally, for Pisces, Saturn is in the first house. So we have a combination of the 11th and the 12th house in the first, or influencing the first house. And so that indicates there's a lot of focus on debts and finances. Jupiter and Venus in the fourth house, that's a good combination for financial gains, especially through communications with children and through creative acts. Although you may have to redo some of your work in a couple of weeks, but that's okay. K2 is in the sixth house. This does give some problems with health, and Mars is in the seventh house. Again, not a good time for new relationships for this particular sign. Um, Moon is, although there can be, let's say if you're forming some kind of an allegiance to fight somebody, it's a good combination. Moon is in the ninth house, and again, that's not a really great combination, but you will get help from unseen parties. You will get help from friends. So that's actually good. Okay, so let's go to the sky map and see what's happening there. Yeah, so it looks like the tsunami didn't hit Hawaii. That was a panic. That was a Rahu panic that we experienced at the beginning of the week. Um, yeah, but there was a major earthquake off the coast of Russia. And so the problem with Mars in Virgo is it's going to make it easy for those events to happen. But if I'm looking carefully at the chart, I have to reposition myself just a little bit. Sorry. I have a chair right next to me I have to put together very soon. That's not your problem, it's mine, but all right. Let's see, So we have the moon over here. So some possibility of flooding maybe in Alaska, maybe in Hawaii. I'm not sure that indicates rising sea levels, but it seems kind of far away from Hawaii. But communications connected with Hawaii will tend to be a little bit um, PR depressing, if I'm honest. We have Rahu right next to Canada. Um, of Mars and Saturn lines, and a Venus line running right through Alberta, right down through um, the entire western part of the United States, from roughly Nevada and California westward. So these states look like they're in particular trouble or in particular frustration over the next few weeks. And it's mainly because this Mars line can give earthquake activity or uh, or crimes, and this Saturn line can bring some hardship to this part of the world. Uh, and so the Mars line is like really right over um, Washington, Oregon, California. might impact Nevada. Saturn is impacting both California, Washington, Oregon, and British Columbia, I believe that is. There is a movement for Alberta to secede from Canada, and I believe there's similar sentiment in Saskatchewan. I'm not familiar with all the provinces in Canada, so forgive me. Um, and but that the government is refusing to let them go through with that. Um, so will we see a civil war in Canada? I don't know. Certainly some civil unrest, I think. Um, Jupiter's going over Montana, Wyoming, um, Mexico, and down into Mexico itself. So the Jupiter line over here is maybe a little bit optimistic, maybe a little bit too idealistic. Um, there are some problems over here in Mexico, which we haven't spoken about all that much right now. But I think you'll see Mexico undergoing some issues over the next few months. Um, Mercury, maybe not with the government, but with trade. Mercury is, and also with the laws. Mercury is going over Ohio, as essentially, so that was where the news story came out about about the incident this week, and I'm carefully avoiding saying what the nature of the incident was. Um, it's also there's also a Sun line going over New York, but there's also a Mercury line running all the way through West Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and down into Florida and Georgia, and also down into Cuba and into Panama, and touching on Ecuador and Peru. So those nations will have, I would say, reversals of fortune, or those areas will have reversals of fortune. It's also close to Ottawa, so that may have something to do with the messages that Ottawa is sending out. Um, the sun is going down over New York, Washington, D.C., Cuba. So you'll see more authority from central power, the central government, essentially the equivalent of the king in the old days. That sort of like fits what's going on in our government right now and also in Toronto. Okay. Cuba, I'm not sure about. I haven't checked the news lately in Cuba, but I know that these governments down here are having a, a lot of trouble, um, all the way from Venezuela down through Peru, touching Argentina. There is a moon line running up through Brazil and Guyana, um, but that could indicate flooding or just potential overload. There is overload of capacity. There is some panic in Brazil. I'm not sure what that could quite be. It may be governmental scandal happening in Brazil, because Brazil has been kind of heavy-handed in terms of how it's been handling censorship, and there may be other issues there as well. The moon is close to the Azores, and so is Saturn. So I hope this isn't true. Some possibilities of earthquakes in near the Azores areas and the Canaries. Um, One is has a moon line right near it, and it has a Venus line right near it. So this could indicate heavy rains or else civil unrest. This is same is true in France and Spain and West Africa, near Morocco, and also in, interestingly enough, Sweden and Norway and Denmark. So this could be in reaction to the ongoing problems they've had with immigration in Europe, but it could also be in relation to what was recently negotiated with President Trump. Uh, there's a lot of news coming out of um, Greece, close to Ukraine, and also a lot of heavy-handed and somewhat depressing news coming out of Egypt, um, Turkey, and I would also say Russia. Um, there's a Rahu line coming out of Iran and touching down on Madagascar. Um, so I'm not ignoring Africa. I'm just looking at these regions first because there seems to be a lot of activity over here, and these are like powder keg areas. So Pakistan, Iran, Afghanistan, India. India looks safe because there's a Jupiter line running through it right now. But I think that this area is, not surprisingly, um, teetering on the edge of blowing up. There's a sun line right next to, excuse me, there's a moon line right next to Israel and going through Egypt, going down through the Sudan and going down all the way through to South Africa. So this part of the world essentially indicates what I would call more authoritarian regimes or um, more suppression. I think a lot of that will break next month. A lot of that will break is not the right word. It will be met with resistance over the next month or so. And let's see, so we've already covered this Rahu line. So there's some panic uh, in Iran, some panic in Russia too. Um, but also this indicates unconventional behavior. So there may be some, as to Saudi Arabia too, in Saudi Arabia as well. So this could also indicate breakoffs or dealing with unorthodox people. Jupiter is protecting India right now, so that's good for India. Um, but again, but again, India may be just a bit overly optimistic. I'm not saying they shouldn't be because we have a Venus line and a Venus line and a Jupiter line abutting both Pakistan and India. So basically, um, there's still a danger of I think I still think a danger of military action against India, which I hope does not happen, by the way. Um, Mercury line is running through um, China, Myanmar, Cambodia, or not Cambodia, actually, what, Thailand, and down to Malaysia, and down into Indonesia. So the government looks like there's more news coming out of this region of the world, and there's a moon line running out of China. So this indicates I would say an unwilling populace trying to help. And this is also running through the Philippines and running down through um, all the way down through Eastern Australia. And we have a Rahu line. So there's some panic in Eastern Australia, some panic in the far eastern part of Indonesia to Guinea. And finally, we have a Saturn line and a Mars line. This could indicate some slackening of domestic demand in, or some inflationary pressure in Australia because of natural resources. And finally, we have a Venus line running through New Zealand and a Jupiter line, which could indicate court cases being undertaken in New Zealand. I use my William Shatner enunciation then. All right, so that's it for me for this week. Uh, Sorry I had an interruption there. And if you have any questions about the chart or about my services, um, please, you can message me in the notes below. I do read all the messages. I respond where appropriate. And I do check on you folks. I do appreciate you dialing in. I love you all. I thank you all for watching. This means a great deal to me. And I wish you peace, prosperity, good luck. Take advantage of that crazy, strong Jupiter luck, Jupiter Venus luck while it's still around. But again, don't feel like it's never going to be over because it'll be over. You know, these patches last for relatively short periods of time, like a few months. And I think uh, so. Like I said, I felt like this before. I've had this. It actually affects me physically. I felt like this before, but I've also had disappointments when I've overestimated um, either my own capacity or the goodness in people. Okay, so I think that, or else um, my own ego and its ability to handle things. Okay, so I again, like I said, pace yourself. Be happy with what you have. Be happy with what you're going to get. But but realize you have to do as well during the bad times with your attitude as during the good times. There are no limits, but that's up to you. Okay? All right. So thank you very much for watching. Whatever happens, don't get discouraged. Be happy, and God bless you all. And again, I love you all very much. Thanks so much for watching, and namaste. Oh, please, if you would be so kind, share, subscribe, like, comment, all that neat YouTube stuff. Okay? All right. Bye, everyone.